Hi guys and welcome back. Today I'm working on my YouTube Artists Collective piece for the theme Phobia. This is actually my second take on the theme since I got the date wrong. So if you'd like to watch my first take on this theme, then you can check out the video. I'll link down in the description, but that was my first. I did that one on Fear of the Dark, and this week is Fear of the Water, or the unknown in the water. I loved this theme, so I'm really glad that I was able to actually take two takes on it. That was kind of a blessing in disguise that I did end up needing to do a secondary piece. But there was just a lot of stuff that I learned while I was working with this theme and on these two pieces as far as stylistically what I want to do with my artwork moving forward. So I think one of the most confusing things for artists is probably art style. It's something that we pretty much all struggle with at some point, and it's this never-ending quest to find how to do something better and how to feel like you're achieving what you want and say what you want to say with your artwork. So it felt really exciting to work on these two with this theme because there are a lot of very vague things that I've been feeling that I wanted to do with my work, but I hadn't really been able to nail it down. There are themes and emotions that I wanted to show, but I couldn't quite figure out how to show them or say it or any of that stuff. So as I was working on these, where I wanted to display the fear in more of a secondary read almost, I felt like I wanted to show it in a way that I think a lot of us kind of live with the fears that we do, where it tends to be there, but we try to push it back and we live around it, around these things that scare us, and we figure out ways to ignore it or to pretend like it isn't there depending on the fears. And it's just, I wanted to display that in these pieces where the characters show concern, but it's not an overt fear necessarily, but more like this very subtle read of this peril that's around them and it's near them. And I actually loved showing that. I don't necessarily think it was the best for really encompassing the theme of phobia. I think that it would have been a great chance to really push it and make a very extreme emotion in my piece, but I do think this fits a lot better with what I actually do want to do with my artwork long term. So I guess there's kind of two sides of the coin. I can always do better to fit a theme, but I can also do better to fit what I want to do with my artwork. But yes, this was eye-opening because that was something that I loved putting in this, where it was a bit of a duality of showing the characters that are in a somewhat peaceful or neutral kind of pose and expression, but then there's still this dark, foreboding element to the piece that's subtly there, and you don't know when it's going to attack, basically. And I loved that. I loved painting it and thinking about it. So it's something that moving forward, I'd really like to figure out how I can adapt it and figure out new ways of imagining it and showing it. And I don't know, this is just a really exciting moment for me because it is something that I've been trying to figure out and trying to define what I wanted to do with my work. And I would love to hear from you guys if there's anything that you've specifically been trying to figure out for your art style moving forward, anything like that, like medium or emotion or subject matter. There's just so many elements that go into the pieces that we create that it can be really hard to figure out what is the element you should focus on and what's the element that's not working and what's the thing that you want to do more of. And there's just so much to think about and so much potential. And I guess that's what's very exciting, but also incredibly daunting. And I've been feeling that a lot lately, where I feel pretty daunted by how many options I have to advance my artwork, to make it feel more emotionally connected to me. But where I have all these options, I also have a lot of wrong paths that I can take myself down. So it feels really exciting to be able to figure out something that feels right. But let's talk a little bit about the actual painting of this piece. So this piece was kind of, as far as the creation of it, the complete opposite of last week's painting. So last week's painting just came together so fast for me. The color comp, and then the final painting just happened so quickly. I had allotted a lot more time to work on it than I ended up needing. I needed about half as much time as I had thought that it would take. And this one, complete opposite. I reworked the sketch and the composition about twice as long as I thought it would, and then I was just stuck on the color comp, specifically the values in the color comp, for so long. And then when it came time to working on the final, I actually restarted this twice. So basically I did do 3 different versions of this piece. The first time I maybe got like a third of the way done with the line work, but her face, the lines, and the artwork that I did for it was just not quite right, and I didn't want to settle for that. So I scrapped it and I started over. And then working on the second version, there were elements that just got messier and messier, and the more frustrated I got with those elements, the less clean I could be with all the others. I definitely noticed that one. I start to feel more frustrated with the piece, and I noticed the mistakes that I hate that are in the piece. I subconsciously stop caring as much, and I don't put as much focus into making sure that each step that I do is as clean and precise and correct as I would if up to that point it looked perfect and great. And I think that's probably how a lot of us kind of deal with that, is that if it doesn't feel like it's looking good, then we don't really want to put in as much effort or time. And it just kind of went downhill until I realized that I just needed to pull the plug on that one and start again. But this time, for the very last one, I decided to work a bit smaller and actually go back to the original composition, where it was a vertical composition. I did a little bit of it with it in the horizontal composition, but it created a lot more confusion, I guess, between elements underneath the water. So in the end, this reads a lot clearer. So I'm happy that I was able to go back to this one and redefine certain areas and make sure that it read really cleanly, and I got rid of things that were much more distracting and not beneficial for the piece. So in the end, that was really helpful, and I'm really glad that I started it over, and I learned a lot specifically on the second try of this piece. So when I went into this one, I knew the path that I wanted to take to make sure that the water had the depth that I wanted and that everything was more cohesive and harmonious. In the last piece, I ended up doing the sky above her as just a complete black. And then I struggled with that because I was using ink, India ink, and then it kind of showed the brush strokes and it had a weird shine to it. And that actually ended up being like the straw that broke the camel's back, I guess you could say, where I couldn't get it this perfect, clean, matte black. So then I tried gouache on top of it, and then it just ended up being this hot mess. So I scrapped it and decided to start over. And I'm really happy that I did, because of obviously multiple reasons, like I already said, but especially that black background behind her, where I actually revert back to watercolors and I let the texture happen, and I used a Payne's gray so that it's a lot softer, and it definitely is a lot more cohesive with everything else, so that it is this cool gray color. And yes, there's just a lot of elements that I was able to remember that I wanted to be really careful with it, and it turned out a lot better and neater and cleaner. And I actually went back to not using masking fluid in this piece. I think that was one of the biggest deals for making it cleaner. I've been really on the fence with masking fluid the last little while, where it makes doing large washes a lot easier, and it definitely makes doing graded washes on areas like the ocean behind her much easier to get a very smooth gradation. Because with this, I have to be very careful about doing each section in a gradiated way so that it's all cohesive. But it ended up a lot cleaner. When I'm using the masking fluid, I can never get this perfect edge to it. So there's always areas where the watercolor, the wash, ends up where it should have been protected. It also ends up farther out away from it so that I have these white gaps. And I always inevitably end up painting in an area that I thought was masked off. So areas like inside of the hair where I had thought that I had filled in all of it because it's a thinner section, but I didn't. And then I ended up painting over it. And then there's this big splotch of the background color in her hair. It's stuff like that. It just completely frustrates me where I just want it to be super crisp and clean. Anyways, that was a big rant about masking fluid. So yes, for this one, I decided I was just going to be very careful and take my time and paint around elements. And I'm a lot happier with that. So I don't really know what I'm going to do moving forward as far as using masking fluid. If I'm going to try to get a better handle of getting the clean edges with masking fluid, or if I'm just going to go down the path of just being able to do things by hand and be careful with it. I don't know. I think it's definitely a kind of thing that I just need to figure out what's best for the piece that I'm currently working on, but I am a lot happier with this result. So I think it's kind of eye-opening that it isn't necessarily a tool that fixes everything and is perfect. It definitely comes with its own negatives and its own drawbacks. And I do have that link to my shop if you're interested in prints or the original of either this week or last week, everything in the theme of Phobia. There is, again, that link down there, so you can go check that out and get some artwork for yourself. I also have a link to Patreon. I do want to give a huge thank you to all of my patrons over on Patreon. You guys are absolutely incredible, and I am so grateful for all of the support that you guys show me. But that is, I think, it for this week. So I'll be back next week with some more art content. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.